Bill,
Yes.
what time is the actual flag raising thing? It says 3 to 5.
Yeah, I think it's at 3:30 is the flag raising.
Okay,
The
so
the
it's early.
the AGM is at 5, and if
Five.
you saw
Okay.
that, it's
All
one of
right.
those real fast boom boom
So if
AGMs.
we get there, if I get there around three, quarter after three is fine.
Yeah,
All
three
right.
3 to 5:30 is what I figure it'll be. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
Are you going to be there, Phil?
I am, yes.
Good. We'll see you there.
Yeah, I've got to vote it for the AGM, right? So
I'm not coming to the AGM. I've got to go to the one in Ramera at the
I
casino.
don't blame you.
What
AGMs are
time does it
constantly
start?
Get
boring.
ready to go when you are, Mayor.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We'll begin with our land acknowledgement at the Township of Severn. We recognize the following land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather and which the Township of Severn operates is part of the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples have been inhabiting and caring for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Ojibwe or Chippewas peoples. This territory is covered by the Lake Simcoe Treaty 16 and the Jake Collins land purchase. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. I'll sing the national anthem, please.
Hmm.
No volume, Allison.
Sorry, is there no volume?
No volume, no.
That's weird. Weird because it's quite loud in my office. Can you hear that?
It started, then it went off. Still no volume.
I'm going to have to apologize, Council. I do not know what is going on with my audio today. It's been a little weird, so I don't know what to do.
Have a moment of contemplation.
My apologies with our IT individual not here this morning.
A moment of contemplation is fine.
Okay, we'll have a moment, please. Thank you. No, any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, no public meetings, no presentations or delegations, consent agenda, adoption of the regular agenda. Moving on to,
Oh, Your Worship, we just need to adopt the agenda.
okay, mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Minnings. Want me to read? Are you going to read it, or we can just?
Yes, so the motion just reads that the special council agenda be adopted as circulated.
All in favor?
Yeah.
That is carried.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to planning report, J1, cutting red tape to build more homes act. So before we begin, I just want to reach out to Miss Woodrow. As I drove by last week, 8 o'clock one night, I saw somebody's car in the driveway here at the office. So I just want to thank you and whoever else was here. I can imagine Miss Mandeville and maybe Brad Lemley for what you've had to interpret as far as what the province has brought forward so that you can help us better understand some of the new rules that are going to be put forward. Quite a lengthy document, difficult to totally understand it in its entirety, but thank you very much to all of you for all your hard work. Did you want to start it off, Ms. Woodrow?
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. Actually, Katie's going to start, and then I'm going to do the second part. So thank you very much.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Ms. Mandeville.
Good morning. So we are just going to start first on the agenda is the Bill 185 report. So I just wanted to highlight to council, hopefully everyone's read the reports. There is a lot of information in there, definitely a lot of information for us as well. So hopefully we can try and work through that a little bit. So the first one we're going to talk about is just the proposed legislative changes that are separate from the PPS, which is the provincial planning statement. So Andrea's going to lead off that discussion after. So we're just going to scope this one to the first report for now. So essentially, Bill 185 was introduced for first reading on April 10th, 2024. Changes are proposed to several acts. Some legislative changes are new. Others are just reversing or changing things that previously were introduced in bills. As we're kind of all familiar with now, there's been a lot of flip-flop in recent years, and this seems to be continuing that trend. So the intent of this report that's first on the agenda is to focus on the schedules pertaining to the Township of Severn. So there was 15 different schedules, 15 different proposed amendments to provincial acts. In particular, staff felt there was 5 ERO postings that are out for comment that really had some applicability to Severn or that we thought we should highlight. So it is out for comment until May 10th. So commenting period closes tomorrow, which is why we're here today at this special council meeting. So the first ERO posting is probably the most significant. You can see in the background of the report, there's quite a few points there. I thought I would just briefly run through that first ERO posting and essentially how that impacts Severn and what we're recommending as comments back to the province on those topics. So just feel free. Maybe I'll run through those and then we can do some questions. I was going to say ask some questions, but as I look at the report, I can't actually see you all. So that probably won't work. So just maybe yell out if there's something as I'm talking. So the first ERO posting, number 1 in the report, 019-8369. So as I said, probably the most impactful to Severn. There's a wide variety of things in that particular posting. So the first one was the removal of parking minimums. At first glance, we didn't think that would impact us. There's a bit of conflicting information out there on how that would work. So if it is to apply to any settlement area where minimum density is assigned, so that would be a minimum number of units per hectare, for example, to increase density. So the removal of parking minimums for us in our rural settlement areas or even our fully serviced settlement areas would negatively impact the township since we don't have a lot of transit. There's not a lot of alternative options other than automobiles. Reducing or eliminating that parking minimum is really just going to push cars more into those public spaces, especially for us. We already have issues clearing streets, especially in the winter around parked cars, things like that. So that was a comment highlighted there for the minimum parking density. The next one in this ERO posting was eliminating the CHIA. So this was a new thing the province had introduced. I don't know, I feel like recently, it could be a few years old now, where it was a type of MZO, which is a minister's zoning order, but it involved community consultation and endorsement from council, things like that. So they're eliminating that CHIA now and just basically revamping a bit the MZO process. So minister's zoning order, they're trying to increase transparency, prove a need for the expedited process, and include community consultation. So we think all of that is promising. That was some of the benefits of the CHIA. However, right now it's just some criteria listed on a website. It's not in the legislation or in a regulation. So that was our only advice, is to actually cement that MZO process into a regulation or a legislation rather than just having guidance material on the website. The third point here is the township already provides for servicing allocation with a use it or lose it type approach. So staff obviously are already supportive of this. Now it's just something that is kind of ingrained in the proposed legislation. So really no issues there, we don't think. The next bullet point, so under number 1, the third bullet point is the elimination of third-party appeal rights. As council may remember, this already happened with consents, minor variances, and draft plan of subdivisions, and that a neighbor or someone other than the municipality or the applicant no longer can appeal those types of applications. This proposed legislation would take that further, and basically no one can appeal an application now if this goes through unless you are an agency, a specified person, basically. So the municipality, the applicant, the school board, an electricity provider, things like that. So township staff just wanted to highlight this for council, as it can be seen as diminishing public participation and putting increased pressure on council, because there is no ability for those members of the public to appeal anymore if this is passed.
Katie, can I speak to that?
Sure.
Yeah, so could a council member be an agent? Can they speak to, how do you said there's a way to get in there to speak to the OLT? Or did I read that?
So through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, so specified persons is a defined term already in the act. That's the only people who can launch an appeal. So the municipality, for example, could appeal something. So if Committee of Adjustment, for example, made a decision council didn't like, council could appeal that decision. The applicant obviously could appeal, which would drag the municipality in. But otherwise, it would only be agencies like the school board, Hydro One, Rogers Telecommunication, things like that, who could appeal a decision. So, you know, if one of those agencies appealed, the municipality obviously would still be involved. But it's not just a resident can no longer appeal, is what the point of this bullet point is.
Right. So just a supplemental, Your Worship. So basically, it couldn't be an individual councillor, but it could be council.
Correct.
Thanks. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Cox.
Through the chair to Katie. Katie, then I misunderstood, because I thought it said to limit third-party appellants to specific persons who have made written or oral submissions and public bodies who have made written or oral submissions. So if a person had made a written or sent in a written or an oral submission, could they come forward? Because I'm mixed up on that then.
Through the mayor to the deputy mayor, I didn't see, I mean, I probably did read exactly what you're quoting from, but I didn't see that differentiation. All I saw was them resulting back to that definition of specified person. I think what they may be saying there is that those agencies, in order for them to appeal, would have had to participate in the process. So they would have had to submit oral or written comments. For example, someone on behalf of the school board would have had to comment in order to then appeal as the school board. So it's that specified person definition that they're going back to. So it's already a similar process for minor variance consents and draft plan of subdivisions.
Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. Yeah, I think it says appeal rights to municipally approved official plans, official amendments, zoning bylaws, and zoning bylaw amendments. So it says that they can appeal that, but not the other. I'll show you what I found. All right. I just had a question on it because I was wondering, same as member Councillor Taylor, it basically just says that no one has any chance and the developers have it all. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Okay, Katie, if you want to carry on.
Thank you. So certainly we can look into that question here as we go. But it is our current understanding that no member of the public would have appeal rights. But certainly we can look at that as we go here. The next bullet point is for a council will recall those mandatory fee refund provisions that came into play last year or 2 years ago. Time is strange now. So township staff are definitely supportive of the removal of mandatory fee refund provisions, but are disappointed to see increased legislation around pre-consultation. So as council may be aware, The Township of Severn now does a two-step or multi-step pre-consultation process, similar to a lot of other municipalities as a reaction to this fee refund process. So we are disappointed to see that pre-consultation will only be voluntary now. Speaking with some private sector planners and some developers over the past few weeks, it doesn't seem like this is something that they were entirely asking for. So our comment there is perhaps a change to allow for the benefits of pre-consultation, perhaps a scope manner to return to the pre-Bill 109 typical pre-consultation process. And there is also an added ability to appeal complete application and pre-consultation now. So even if someone chooses to do a pre-consultation, which if this goes ahead, would be entirely their choice, not mandated, they could then appeal during that pre-consultation process. So a little bit confusing there. The next bullet point in here is the settlement area boundary expansion. So there is, as council knows, typically in the past, the last quite a few years, settlement boundary expansion could only be done through the Municipal Comprehensive Review or the MCR process. Now a request for settlement boundary expansion could occur outside of that. There is no MCR process anymore. So staff are concerned that this policy seems to give increased control to the development community and creates difficulty for the township to independently plan for growth, infrastructure, orderly settlement expansion, etc. So township staff are concerned about this policy and that it will add added costs and time to development planning or policy planning in general, with the township trying to orderly plan for these things without developers coming in and basically trying to expand settlement boundaries at any time they might like. So in addition, the appeal mechanism used to be that settlement boundary expansions were not appealable, and now they are appealable. So basically, if we don't make a decision on a settlement boundary expansion, that developer could appeal that. So again, more rights to the development community.
So Katie, can you hear me? Because my video's gone off. It says my something's wrong with my Zoom as far as video, but can everyone hear me? So as part of that, so if they're going to put that in there and a development's able to expand the settlement boundary, who pays to expand our wastewater plants if that is the case, or all the infrastructure that comes with it? Is it the onus on the developer? Like it isn't clear who's paying for it.
Yeah, so to the mayor's question, certainly that's something that typically happens, through the development charge process and through our standard processes. None of that is slated to change. What is going to change is that typically in the past, the municipality had the ability through the MCR process or, whatever came before that. Now I can't remember, but to be able to say, here's our boundary, and because of our infrastructure, we think we want to grow this direction. Whereas now, a developer could come in and say, it's great that you think you're going to grow this direction, but we want you to grow this direction. And then basically do that. And then the municipality, would have some obligations to try to service that other area versus the area where we thought we were going to grow. Because it is our responsibility to try and service those fully serviced settlement areas. So obviously it's not perhaps as impactful in our rural settlement areas in terms of infrastructure. But yes, development charges would still come into play for, sewage plant upgrades, things like that. It's just a lot harder for us as a municipality to try and plan those expansions when we really don't know who's going to come in with what parcels in order to expand that boundary. Whereas in the past, we could kind of say, here's where we think we're going to expand it. Here's where we think the growth is going to go. So that's the challenge we see around that topic. The actual item of settlement boundary expansions and how you get to a settlement boundary expansion is what will be covered in the PPS report that Andrea will talk about just after this. This is more about the appeal mechanism and the ability to do those settlement boundary expansions in the legislation.
Okay, thank you.
So the actual criteria on how to expand a settlement boundary, we're going to get into after in the PPS report.
Okay. Councilor
I'll save my question.
Councilor Minnings.
Hi, thank you. And through the mayor to Katie. So what you just said about the settlement boundary expansions specific to it would be difficult for the township to plan for them. It would appear to me from listening to your response just now that it wouldn't be until a developer approached the township saying, I own this parcel of land, nothing to do with the settlement boundary, obviously now. And this is what I'm planning to do. So would not any planning kick in at that point for the township rather than, is that where the added expense would be for the township if somebody was to approach the township saying, I'd like to put, a development here where we hadn't previously considered hookup to other services? My question is so no advance cost to the township, but it would be upon notification from that developer that that was their plan. Is that correct?
Katie?
Yep, through the mayor to Councillor Minnings, correct. We essentially would have no advanced warning. So, all the legislation that tells us we need to plan for growth for the next, 30 years, for example, it's very hard to do that when you don't know that an individual developer is going to come in tomorrow and tell you that they want to grow in the opposite direction that we thought we were going to grow.
Okay.
So the next comment here I wanted to highlight, which I'm sure council's all aware of, is the elimination of the county as the planning authority. So essentially the county currently remains our approval authority for official plan amendments, draft plan of subdivision, condominium, etc. So the elimination of the county as our planning authority will place an increased burden on the municipality to plan for that growth that I was just talking about. Obviously, that previous MCR process was run through the county. We had county resources to not only pay for it, but work on it, manage consultants for it. So small municipalities like the Township of Severn, we don't have any in-house policy planners, for example. So we really appreciated the ability to work together with our neighboring municipalities, especially the other small municipalities, and try and find cost savings and efficiencies there. So we think our comment to the province should be to allow that to continue, even if the county no longer has those planning authority. So if the county can no longer make planning decisions, we're hopeful that we can still use the county as an outlet, almost like a consulting company to basically, bring those resources together and allow that opportunity for other small municipalities like us to work together on these large scale projects. Such as growth forecasting or natural heritage mapping or things like that.
Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair to Katie. Katie, this one concerns me deeply because it's going to come down and be downloaded on us, the costs are. And nowhere did I see anything. And I think that is a big factor for the costs on municipalities. Where is this money coming from? Are we going to hit the property owner again, so that the developer can have these things done quickly? That's my concern. And when now our OP will go to that's probably for the next one. But anyway, this not having Simcoe County, it takes away the planning idea of where everybody is. So if you take what you just talked about, you have a boundary expansion, and let's say you're Penetanguishene, and you decide you're going to go this way, and now you're going to bump into Midland, and then it wasn't organized, and then it's just going to be chaos because no one's going to know where anything is, just so the developer can build where they want. And I hate to be rude, but we missed the facilitating standardized housing design, and I only was happy with that. I thought if there was a way we could do that, it would be very handy for homeowners and builders if you had standardized plans for a certain type of house or standardized for a garage, that they can come in and go, great, there's a 30 by 20 garage and it's all done. And then they can just move ahead with it. And it may be handy for tiny homes or any of the ARUs too. So I think that is a good idea, even though they still haven't given all the specifications on where you can put them and what you can do with them. But part of that is okay. That loss of county is very major for us.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to Katie. So were there any charges whenever the county did stuff for us, or was it free in essence, or were there some costs to us? I'm just following up what the deputy mayor was saying. what's the net impact financially? And not only are we missing the upper tier overview, but what were their costs to us and what will it cost us in the future?
Katie?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, that's a lot of unknowns, I think. So basically right now, the MCR process, even as it continues to this day, the director and I just had a conversation with county planning about the work still continuing on the MCR. That was no direct cost to the township, I would say. So that was part of the county tax base fueling that expense for the entire county, right? So, I mean, indirectly, I suppose our residents paid the county their taxes, and you know, out of that came the MCR work. But as everyone knows, there's power in group buying, to just simple it right down, right? So the fact that the county was looking at this as a wholesome approach, using one consultant to look at everyone's boundary expansions and everyone's populations, whereas in the future, when we want to plan for long-term growth, which is mandated by the province, we have to plan for long-term growth. We will need to hire our own consultants and manage our own consultants. So perhaps in the long range, you know, less tax dollars go to the county for county planning, but you can bet that way more tax dollars are coming to the Township of Severn planning department. And I just have a hard time thinking that's going to equal itself out.
Okay, just to follow up through the mayor.
Yep.
So the items that are on their shelf right now, i.e. the official plan and whatever. So how does that happen? Do you think there'll be like a 2-year thing to phase them out, or what happens? And what is the status of the official plan review with the county?
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with you, I see our CAO has popped on. I don't know if she wanted to comment first before I answered those last couple questions.
Okay, Madam CAO. You're on mute, Madam CAO.
Sorry, I haven't done that in a while. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to relay, I was listening to Katie's comments, and they're from Severn's perspective, which is great. But I was at a county CAO's meeting a couple of weeks ago, and the county CAO was talking about that. So not only is it a detriment to us for that, but the county was talking about without, you know, the roads all interconnect. So without all those bigger planning, like it just is not a good thing. So, and it's tricky for the county because they're trying to support their role, and it sounds a little bit like kind of holding on to things, but there is value in what they do. Region wide, because we're only going to plan roads to our border, but it's going to cross the border to the next border and go to affect the next township. And so that there is value to that service. So the county is also commenting on this, I'm sure, to talk about what the value of upper tier planning is. And I think, like, if you look at sort of who went first, maybe there's less value in bigger places, but we're very small and, you know, not dense. So the things do really have to interconnect. So the county is on this point as well. I just wanted to bring that forward.
Thank you. Councillor Minnings.
Thank you. I do have a question, but before I ask that, I just through the mayor to the CAO, based on what you said with your conversation with other CAOs under the County of Simcoe, in that, you know, in that same perspective, I would imagine you may know that there are other similar meetings happening across all 400 plus municipalities in the province, and wondering if you know if, as far as individual responses going up tomorrow for tomorrow's deadline, whether or not there's a more coordinated response based on some of what you're proposing here from Severn.
Madam CAO.
Yeah, through Your Worship, I guess the answer is I don't know that. What I've seen and read is it seems to be dependent on size. So bigger municipalities are more content to go it alone, and their services are all contained within their own lower tier borders, where in the smaller municipalities that's not the case. So I think it's a size differential. Some municipalities want this for sure, and some don't. But I don't know if there's an overarching report. Certainly AMO has weighed in, and lots of different kind of bodies have weighed in to say regional planning is always a good idea. But I don't know what the individual feedback will be.
Thank you so much. So through the mayor, if I may, the question would be for Katie, and it's just a clarification on that bullet in your report about the county. So just for my own clarification, would the county remain the approval authority for things like the official plan? And would that remain separate and distinct from the proposed change to eliminate them as a planning authority? So just if you could help me understand the terms approval authority versus the term planning authority. Thank you.
Katie?
Through the mayor to Councillor Minnings, those, for this purpose, those two things are one and the same. So they would no longer approve our draft plan of subdivisions, our official plan amendments, our new official plan, things like that. Automatically, that would default to the province. And just to give an idea on timing, the County of Simcoe did an official plan amendment, which has been with the province for review and approval for almost 2 years. So although, you know, we may think the county adds time to this process, I'm not sure we think the alternative is going to make things better. And what we haven't heard is how the province is going to deal with this influx of approval authority situation. Are they going to, you know, hire all the staff from the upper tier to work then at the province, or how is that going to work? So we really, you know, I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. But in this situation, those two terms you mentioned are interchangeable for us. And I see again, CAO popped on, so maybe she'd like to spread some light on that too.
Madam CAO.
Sorry, Katie, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just thinking we missed answering a couple of Councillor Taylor's questions. So I was just going to circle back to that. And I may have missed all the questions, so Katie can help me. I think one of them was when, like when, so far the province hasn't said when the county will lose its authority, but when they do, every time there's a new regulation, there's transition rules that come along with it that I have no idea what they'll say, but they tend to say things like anything in at X date, you know, still goes through A process, and anything after that date goes through B process. So that's how that usually happens. And you also ask the status of ROP, and you will see an update on next week's planning meeting for that. So there is a staff report coming to update you. And I'm not sure if I captured all of your questions, but I knew there was a couple that didn't get answered when we moved on.
Councillor Taylor. You're on mute.
Yeah, those are the two main ones, and thanks, and looking forward to next week.
Councillor Brennan.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Katie, I wasn't going to comment until you finished your section. I guess you're going through this section by section, like you've got this as number one. I know you're almost finished your list. There's about, what, 2 items left. I'd like to comment when you're done that list, if I may.
So we'll just wait. Okay, thank you.
Just wait for Katie to finish each section. To me, it'll be more efficient, I think.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox, did you want to wait? We'll wait. Okay, Katie, if you want to continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that was essentially the end of that section. As the Deputy Mayor had pointed out, I did skip over a couple things that I didn't think, or staff didn't think, were really all that important to comment on from the Township of Severn's perspective. Certainly, we're supportive of the idea of standardized building plans, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned. It's just hard to say we're fully supportive of that right now when they haven't released any details. They've just said, here's a thing we're going to do, and nothing's come of it, right? So it's hard to get excited or be supportive of something that we really don't know what that is. So I think I basically have reached the end of that number one section. And again, I see the CAO is here.
Madam CAO, and then I'll have Councillor Brennan speak.
Sorry, I just wanted to pop up on the standard building permits, because that won't be as easy as for Severn as you hope. Works really well in places where I live, and like in Barrie, that have very cookie cutter subdivisions, but we have such irregular lots that you might have a standard plan, but it doesn't fit on the lot because you've got an outcropping of granite somewhere and your setbacks don't work and your lot is irregular. So it might be beneficial, but probably not as much as it would to a bigger center that has very cookie cutter kinds of lots.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yes, thank you. If I may go back to, first of all, the minister's zoning order. We did receive late yesterday, unfortunately, because this whole process has been designed so that input is not coordinated well. From April 10th to May 10th is absolutely insane. But having said that, and everyone knows it, on the MZOs, the position taken by AMO that is not included in what you said today, to me, is critical as a comment. MZOs are an authoritarian tool. They're an attack on our democracy. They're an attack on our planning. And what AMO suggests is that they need to also, in the legislation, enshrine the need to use MZOs only in collaboration with municipalities and in situations of extraordinary urgency. And that's what they were intended for before they've been abused in the last few years. And other than that, because MZOs will undermine any planning we do. So I think that comment has to be strongly emphasized. AMO does a pretty good job in their document on Bill 185. And I think that's a point that we need to emphasize in any comment we make. To use it or lose it is great, except that'll depend on the timelines that we're allowed to use. Like, is it 5 years or is it 30? The farther out the cutoff date, the more meaningless that legislation will be. And they should be telling us what that is to make it useful. Third-party appeal rights, oh, what can I say? Again, another attack on democratic rights. It is absolutely wrong to do that. All the power with the developers. This is a sprawl agenda, and it's a disgrace to take away third-party appeal rights. And I think we should have a strong position on that. This specified persons thing is just total planning nonsense. The municipal pre-application process, pre-consultation, I fully agree with the position you've taken. That should be a requirement for logical planning. The settlement area expansion stuff is the biggest. Well, I better not say what I'm really thinking about it. But I mean, talk about craziness. But within that, I also understand, and I don't know where this comes in, I'm a little lost, that 80% of our wetlands are no longer protected under these changes as well. So we were offered an opportunity to send in 2 questions. I hope you've had a chance to consider that. What is the impact on us there? It can't be good. The upper tier planning loss is clearly going to be a burden, and I'm talking a huge burden, basically. And the other thing about losing that is, you got to hope that down the lane someday we will be able to get back into some watershed planning for the purposes of balancing out environmental and development needs. And you get rid of the upper tiers, any chance of doing that it becomes a distant and long, it'll be a long time before we can fix it, if we ever can. So then when you talk about expedited approvals for facility projects, like schools and stuff, that sounds really great, but what exactly are you saying? Like what? What does it mean that you can put these things anywhere you want to at any time because they're for community colleges who basically are bringing in foreign students and training them in business, as you probably heard in the news today, that we don't need? We're training them as Uber drivers, for God's sake. Like, there has to be some sense put to where these things go. I don't care what kind of a community development they are. And I don't think anyone should expect us to approve of something without some detail, in my view. That's it on that part for me. Thanks.
On which part would you like Katie to answer, Councillor Brennan? Is there a section?
Well, I don't know where the wetlands probably comes under the PPS. Is that not correct, Katie? Yeah.
Okay,
So we'll hit that when we get there then. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair. I just have a question, and I'm going to make a statement. I need to clarify. If the county is no longer going to be our planning authority, does their official plan then become our official plan until we can blend them? See, this is where I think, I know you're going, I don't know, nobody else knows from what I can gather. We're supposed to merge plans and do things, and now we're supposed to be approval of the subdivision. There's many other things, and my biggest concern, and I don't know where we can state it or how we can, is as much as they think they're giving us more capabilities on planning, all they're doing is downloading costs to our municipality and probably most of the municipalities in Simcoe County. And especially, I think it's tiny in us. I think it's just us. We now will have to approve our own subdivisions. So I would hope that somewhere we can say, when do you stop this? Because we are now going to have to pass this on to the taxpayer. So if you're passing on all these things down the line, the developer is going to say, well, yeah, now my development charges are more, now I have to do this more. So affordable housing just goes flying out the window because we're downloading costs to the people who are the developers, not the individual homeowners, the developers who are now saying, we can expand boundaries, we can do all this stuff, and you just need to make that all work, get the infrastructure in for us. And bottom line is development is not paying for development. Is that clear? Okay. The only other one I wanted to talk to you about was when the CAO came in about the standardized housing. My only happiness for that is for the simple ones that may cause our building department to get clogged or people to come in. Garages are one. I think there's 2 or 3 more. You probably know, and so does the building department. I'm really not too concerned about the developer. I'm more concerned about the individual homeowner who is now going to come in and want to build a home on a lot. And he's going to get nailed, or she is going to get nailed on development charges because we have to increase them to cover the costs that have been downloaded on us. And that is where I am going to hear my most complaints is I have a lot, and now I have to pay all this money before I even build because now we're footing the bill for the downloading. Thank you. I feel better.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Yes, if I may, again, and I'm going to refer to the AMO release yesterday that you all got yesterday. This doesn't do anything for affordable housing. Affordable housing in AMO, quote unquote, affordable housing remains a significant concern. Yeah. We're not doing anything for affordable housing here. We're just doing sprawl. And the other part that AMO makes that I think we need to support AMO in, because I think they're right on, is they talk that while streamlining land use planning is desirable, it must be balanced with environmental protection. And Bill 23's weakening of conservation authorities, which applies outside of our area, but basically, you know, we're nowhere on the environmental protection front. It's actually contrary even to our strategic planning today.
So Katie, comment by Deputy Mayor Cox with the development charges, and I know that we're having a review of our development charges later this year. As just a comment, if they're going to be allowed to expand the settlement areas where they think expansion should go, which baffles me because we sitting here know where we should grow, not a developer that will build homes and then leave afterwards and leave us with the mess. How are we going to charge these developers? Because the DCs that are on the homes today will not pay to expand these sewer plants. It won't even remotely, like it'll be borne by every resident in this township. And is the province aware? Like, how can they allow something like this? And are we going to comment to that effect? Like years ago, we got money from the feds and the province to build and expand our sewer plants. And there's no way that the development charges today are going to be able to do that. So it's just a comment, but is that something that we're going to comment to the province on? Like, I would think they would understand that process, would they not? Or obviously they don't.
Okay. So to the mayor's comments, yeah, we don't know. I think it goes back to that long range planning thing, right? We're doing the development charge background study right now. How do you do that study? How do you do any of these long range planning tools when you don't know where you're going to grow? We don't know the answer to that. We don't know how to do these things, but you're absolutely right. As far as I know, these current development charges, we've been collecting the current proposed development charges. They're not fully paying for that sewage expansion. And that's why a lot of municipalities like Severn are in a place where we're at capacity for, water or sewer in our case, in a couple of our settlement boundaries or settlement areas. And, I don't know, we keep hearing money's going to come from the province for infrastructure and money's going to come from the province to make up for development charges. I'm not sure that Severn's seen any of that money yet. That is probably a good leeway, though, to the third ERO posting, which proposes changes to the Development Charges Act. So they are basically flip-flopping on some of what was there before. So the township is supportive of repealing the mandatory 5-year phase-in. The township is supportive of reinstating studies as an eligible capital cost. So paying for that DC background study can now be taken out of the DC money. The ability to extend a DC bylaw without doing a new study, and then tracking applications for up to 2 years to monitor frozen DC rates is very challenging. So we're supportive of going down to 18 months. Those are just a couple of bullet points under the DC one. Andrew and I did run this past our director of finance, so I don't know if Andrew wanted to add anything else to that, but certainly if there's some DC questions on that number 3 in the report, I would gladly hand them over to Andrew Plunkett.
So just before I let Councillor Brennan speak, and I think an example for the province, I don't know if we can, it's out in the public forum and it's been in all the papers, the town of Collingwood, with so much growth, is now looking at $190 million to build a new facility, and I'm not sure who's going to pay for it. So I see this happening to any of the municipalities that are in the growth area, so including us. It won't be the $100 million price tag, but it's going to be so expensive that we can't afford it. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, and again, there's some good material in the AMO paper on the DCs. I mean, they go to great lengths to point out that these DCs are not a tax. But one of the things that comes through, and I think people need to understand this, in their paper, they're very clear, and quote unquote, DCs only covered between 60 to 80% of costs prior to Bill 23. Prior to Bill 23, our taxpayers here we're getting hit always. And if I can't even imagine how much more we'd have to hit them under any other scenario that doesn't include some new funding for infrastructure in Ontario.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair. And Collingwood's just finished their development charges, and I think the town of Blue Mountain did. And I may be wrong, but I think I'm pretty close. Their development charges doubled because of what's going on. So that can be very detrimental. I mean, no offense, the developer's going to absorb that into his cost for houses. But what about the people who want to build their homes? And now that just takes one more step away, which it could have been affordable housing. But we need to watch, because I think when you see, I'll let Mr. Plunkett speak to it, he's probably going to be bringing us something. And I think we're all going to be very astounded.
Mr. Plunkett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're actually in the middle of our DC study as well, and we'll be getting a draft report shortly. The goal is, once we have the draft report, the senior management team will look at it, and we are planning, and I'll be talking to the DC consultant again today, about having a workshop for council so that you can get more information on what's happening with the DCs. Even though we haven't seen the draft report yet, our gut feeling is ours are going to at least double as well. And it is to pay for growth, though. It's to ensure that residents aren't footing the bill when the developer should be. That workshop should, I would imagine, either end up in late May or early June, as we will have to release the report in final 60 days before we pass it, and the goal is to pass it in late August of this year. for our new DC study.
Thank you, Andrew. Katie, do you want to carry on?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, although I felt
you.
like the director of finance or whatever his title is there could have, answered more questions instead of just being on us, but we'll continue.
I think the DC study is something that we'll have an opportunity, as Andrew has said, when we have that workshop, because there's a lot of questions that I think all of us will have. Go ahead, Andrew.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, I think my piece of the report was fairly self-explanatory, but they have brought the growth-related studies back in, so they are an eligible cost. So they will be included in our current DC study. And as well as they've removed the discounting over the 5-year discounting of the DCs, which is beneficial for us because we hadn't had to implement it because it would have only been for new DC studies. So had they not changed this, when we passed the DC bylaw in August, and effectively if somebody took a building permit in in September, we would have only been able to charge them 80% of the new DC. As it stands now, they've taken away the discounting, so we should be able to recover the full amount of the DC that whatever our new DC is, we'll be able to recover the full amount.
So, Andrew, when we have that workshop, so I'm not sure what happened in Collingwood, but if they could use that as an example so that we have a better understanding how they got themselves into such a bind, like $190 million bill to expand that sewer plant, and I'm not sure who's paying for it with no federal or provincial funding.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of Collingwood, but ultimately, staff needs to be aware of what projects are going to be necessary to further growth. And if staff doesn't come up with the capital forecast correctly, and it's not included in your DCs, then unfortunately, items like this can come into play.
Well, I'm looking at the report that's written. If developers are allowed to look at their own at expanding the settlement area, where they think, that's my struggle, is how do we accommodate that type of growth when our sewer plants are only so large? So I think that's what happened. And I hate to bring back Collingwood, but I think that's what happened. The amount of growth that's happened there and no planning for expansion of their plants. And I think that's where they're at. But anyways.
No, I support you in that one, Mr. Mayor. If we can't determine where the growth is going to happen, it's almost impossible for us to forecast the capital costs of those projects.
Right. Madam CAO.
Yeah, I was just going to speak to Collingwood with my very limited knowledge because I just happened at the county CAOs to be sitting beside the CAO of Collingwood, and that they've had all sorts of things that caused it, but we're going to see the same thing in general, huge price increases. Because I think what Mayor Burkett quoted 192 million or something like that. 2 years ago, I think they got an engineering estimate at 80 million. So it's double plus when they actually went out for it. So the costs have astronomically increased over the last 3 or 4 years. So they're looking hard for grants. They're also wondering how they're going to pay for it for sure. And it's a big concern for them. They also are cost sharing with New Tech. They just came to an arrangement for that because they provide water to New Tech.
Yes, thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, that Collingwood one, I was just going to agree with the CAO, what she said. I was going to say that. The other one is Township is in the same. I think they're at 25 or 30 million. And they're looking, and there is funding, but I don't know how to get it. They're asking for it, and I know that Collingwood has been. I have a question through the chair to Katie. Katie, what about the existing subdivisions that are on paper that haven't moved for a while? And the use it or lose it. So if they haven't done anything for a while, can we take their capacity and give it to someone else now? If it's going to be a go build, like someone who wants to move it instead of us hanging on to it. Because I know we have quite a few on the books that are just sitting there. And if we had someone come in who wanted to build, let's say, affordable housing unit, could we say, well, guess what? We do have the capacity because these people are sitting on it and they've been sitting on it for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So we could take that and move ahead.
Yes, through the mayor. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of people in that position right now in our service settlement areas. Although we have some old draft plan of subdivision approvals they don't actually get allocation for those services until they have final approval. And I may need the director of planning to help me here, as I see director of public works isn't on. We do have a servicing allocation bylaw. It does set out that you have X number of years to use that allocation after you have a subdivision agreement signed.
Okay.
So I know we did look, for example, just to use Coldwater as an example, the director of public works and we did take a very quick look to see if there was some servicing allocation that had already been doled out there that we could take back because nothing's happening. And it's really only a handful of lots. So it really wouldn't say, you know, bring on board an affordable housing project or something like that. Like there's just not enough capacity there that we could take back to really make a difference. You know, if we had a subdivision agreement signed with 200 homes that was just sitting, absolutely, we could take that back in accordance with our bylaw and free up some capacity. But we just don't have that example right now. And that's because, again, they don't get that capacity until a subdivision agreement is signed. Not they get draft plan approval. So the old approvals that come to council for extensions, those are draft plan approvals, and that doesn't guarantee them any services at that point.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Brennan.
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor to the director of finance on the DC review. Is there also AMO's position is that in addition to what has transpired in terms of the current proposal, is to reinstate the cost of land as an eligible DC expense, which means that when we got to buy land for water treatment plants and water towers and transit and police and all that, that cost needs to be included as well. And the second recommendation is to reinstate the cost of housing services as an eligible DC. So that's for building community housing, emergency shelters, and basically the cost of maintaining that.
Mr. Plunkett, are you still there?
I am, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, it just takes a little while for my camera to show up for some reason. As far as the housing related, I think that wouldn't be, if I can through the mayor to Member Brennan, that would be more of a upper tier because they are the ones that produce that form of housing. So it wouldn't be RDC, it would be a county DC. And if you could just, as far as the land, I think I did see something, but I can't remember. I can't remember specifically if land was allowed. And I'll have to take a look to see if they've reinstated bringing the land costs in.
Well, yesterday's AMO document says they haven't, but anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Minnings.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to sort of jump on the back of the deputy's comment about the use it or lose it for subdivisions, et cetera, developments that are in the works. And then through to Katie about the response that I can't remember your wording, whether or not we don't have any in the works or we may have only a few, but they're not big. That may be true, but in West Shore, we've got the development site that I believe has subdivision approval on West Shore Crescent for 7 or 8 homes. We also have a townhouse development behind the Tim Hortons that, you know, was sort of starting. I believe that has full approval from the township as far as ready to build. And last year, this council voted to give them both extensions again, you know, for their various reasons as to why they're not able to begin their building. So it may be small, the township may be small, West Shore may be small, but having unfinished projects or projects where the ground has been made building ready, so they've removed trees and really ruined the landscape because nothing started, is very unsettling. So I'm hoping that the response for this item from the township, regardless of how small we are, is that, yeah, let's do a use it or lose it where we can. And I'm just wanted confirmation on, is that what's being put forward from staff in response to the province? Thank you.
Katie?
Through the mayor to Councillor Minnings, we did say in our report that we were supportive, yes, of the use it or lose it policy or legislation being in the legislation. That's a funny word to put it. Yeah. But yes, we already had a bylaw basically that did this. So we're supportive of it now being within the provincial legislation.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions, or can Katie carry on? Okay, Katie, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we did work through all of number 1 already, and we did work through number 3. So number 2 is a bit less impactful to us, and some things we've already been doing. So we've already started putting our notices on our website. The ability to advertise in the paper, as we all know, is gone. The elimination of third-party appeals, which is strangely in the 2 ERO postings we kind of covered already. And so the second posting, we didn't really have a lot of comments on in terms of the modernization initiatives. The 4th posting was essentially about additional residential units, so those ARUs. Township staff are supportive of increasing the ability to accommodate ARUs within our fully serviced settlement areas. That's really where the province is targeting these. However, we are hoping there could be some clarification around encouraging the province to specify that capacity must exist for the municipal water and sewage treatment system in order for those increased permissions to be utilized. Council may also want to consider the appropriateness of 3 or more units on all properties if this is something that should only apply to larger municipalities with increased community services and infrastructure. So essentially, as people may have heard through the media, there is a push on for those 3 units to be permitted as of right on every residential property that's on full municipal services. So I just want to stress that. We get a lot of people in the municipality here that are looking for those additional residential units and are on private services. Right now, it's only mandated, it's only legislated for full municipal services. What staff think is really important here is that clarification that there needs to be capacity in those systems to allow for these additional units. As council knows, we have a settlement area that is at capacity for a sewage lagoon. So if you start taking every single person who's hooked up to that system and allowing them to have 2 additional residential units on each of those lots without any planning approvals, where's that capacity for water and sewer coming from? So they also don't pay development charges for those additional residential units. They are basically exempt. So it's not like we're collecting development charges from those additional units that would then be helping us to fund an expansion to our system. So I think that comment is just important to us at a staff level and also an infrastructure planning level, that these additional units can only come on board, as much as we'd like to see them and we're supportive of them, they can really only come on board if we have that servicing capacity available. So that was our primary point there in the number 4 posting. Not sure if there were any comments on that number 4 when I know the deputy mayor kind of had her hand up for a minute.
Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair to Katie. Katie, does this give us the ability, if someone wanted to do an ARU in a rural or rural residential area? So we have that ability, you have that, we have that ability if they want to do a granny flat or a whatever like we've done before. I think the concern that I had was it's the zoning and there's not enough information, because basically I think it just talked about minimum lot size and bedrooms, but nothing more. So I think that's another one we'll just have to wait, but thank you for your input on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, through the mayor, if I could just further comment on that.
Yes, go ahead, Katie.
Yes, that's a great point. I did want to mention is there's some rumblings, I guess you could say, that it's going to be exempt from bylaw provisions such as, maximum lot coverage, setbacks, things like that kind of constrain people right now. And again, we're not sure how to comment on that because those regulations haven't been released. So we're not really sure where that would go. But certainly the direction from the province on building more housing has encouraged us really at a staff level to try and make those accommodations for people who want secondary houses, accessory, or just a secondary dwelling period. So we have put that into our new draft official plan. And then, that will trickle down to the bylaw when we get to that point as well. So it's not, the province isn't mandating that we, allow it as of right on every property. It's only those fully serviced areas, but it is definitely an encouragement for us to put in our official plan and work through that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan. You're on mute, Councillor Brennan. You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. Through the mayor to Katie, I'm not sure if this is the right section, but it's my understanding that Bill 185 does not require municipalities to allow fourplexes. And I don't know, what's with that anyway? Do you have any idea? What's the logic to this?
Katie?
Through the mayor to Councillor Brennan. So this is the fourplex thing is a thing that the federal government is pushing to allow up to 4 units as of right on the same municipal water and sewer properties. So that's something the federal government has been pushing, and apparently there's money out there for people who want to adopt that. Again, I think you have to look at the appropriateness of that in Severn Township. You know, it's kind of similar to the parking minimums we talked about during this report. How are you putting 4 units as of right, meaning no zoning provisions, just you need a building permit on every property that has water and sewer in the Township of Severn? You know, parking would be a nightmare for us. We don't have transit. You know, it's just a different kind of lifestyle. You know, should downtown Mississauga have 4 units as of right on every property? Maybe, I'm not sure. But that's kind of the driving force there, is for those larger urban centers to stop prohibiting kind of what they're calling gentle density, which is allowing these ARUs on, you know, historic neighborhoods or historically stable neighborhoods in, you know, the downtown GTA, I think is where this driving force really is coming from. So I think, you know, one of the good things, take it or leave it, about the growth plan is that it did split up the province into different areas and try and say, you know, here's this inner ring that we know density really needs to be the focus. The outer ring, you know, maybe not so much. And then outside of the growth plan, there's just not that demand. So I think those 4 units is something some agencies are really pushing for, to allow for affordable housing and to accommodate growth. I'm just not sure it's really realistic for the entire province, which is what this new legislation is doing, is saying anyone on full municipal services in the entire province of Ontario as of right can have 3 units.
So supplementary on that. So what,
Yes.
But couldn't you build them then without reducing the parking? Like, in other words, build them where they make sense, right? And optimize your square footage of land. Like, why do you have to reduce parking and make it silly, really?
So through the mayor, I think it just depends on a lot by lot basis, right? So I think in the old days, that's what you kind of did, right? You would come forward with your zoning bylaw amendment application to put a 4-plex on a property or to put a 3-plex on a property, and you'd have to prove that it met the setbacks, it met lot coverage, it met parking, you know, you're buffering from the neighbors, you were doing all these things. Well, when they put it in legislation that you can have 3 units and, you know, the push for 4 units, it means you don't have to go through the zoning process. You don't have to accommodate parking. You don't have to accommodate the setbacks. You don't have to accommodate any of those things. It's just an as of right, get a building permit, build 3 units. So, you know, I think it just depends. And that's the ability, you know, we always say when someone has to go through a rezoning or a minor variance, it's an ability to then judge each property on the individual merits of that application. Whereas just sweepingly saying everyone can have one, because there's probably properties, as you say, that, you know, can't accommodate a parking spot or can't accommodate additional units. And that's that ability when you look at it on a site specific basis, rather than just applying a blanket, everyone can do this.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to Katie. So I was reading there that I thought the province was okay with additional residential units anywhere, even on private systems, but they couldn't be severable. You couldn't sever them into and am I correct? And are we okay with that from the staff perspective? Sort of what we've got now, I think, like what the deputy mayor was saying.
Katie?
So through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, that's something we'll get into a little bit more in the PPS report. Yeah. But yes, basically they're supportive, you know, it's supporting any, you know, increase in unit numbers, kind of, not any maybe, but, you know, having 2 or 3 dwellings on a property. But yes, the caveat is that you can't sever that. So that is something we'll talk about in the PPS report next, as it kind of ties into those proposed policies there.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Is Councillor McIntyre still with us? He has lost his video, as have I.
I'm still here.
Okay,
I
good.
just don't have no video, that's all.
No, I don't have video either. Do you have any questions, Councillor McIntyre?
No, I'm okay with everything. I just had a little concern about the lose it or use it or lose it, how we apply it to someone else. And the person in the queue loses their position. But it makes sense when the explanation that Katie and Councillor Brennan said. So I'm good with it so far.
All right, thank you. So I think we're almost done, are we not, Katie? But are we going to talk about, and maybe Andrea will speak to it, about how this new provincial planning statement, how we always had, they're going to eliminate the growth plan and all that work they've done over the last 15. Is that something you're going to speak to, Ms. Woodrow, when you bring the PPS forward? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Could we have a 5-minute bio break, please?
Sure. Are we almost done this section? Let's just finish this. Are we almost done this? We're done.
When Katie's finished, that's what I meant before we started the next one.
Katie, go ahead. Are you finished?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did just want to kind of summarize here before we wrapped up this report. So as I mentioned, the intent of this report is to provide comments just on the specific ERO postings that we've highlighted in the analysis section. So that bolded text in the analysis section is what staff are proposing to comment to the province. So I think the discussion here has been generally supportive of that. The other thing I wanted to mention that I heard from Councillor Brennan, which is perhaps a great idea to add to the motion, is just our concurrence with AMO's submission that came out yesterday. I think they make a lot of great points. So perhaps we add that to the recommended motion as well. The other thing I just wanted to highlight that was kind of stuck at the bottom of this report, all of these changes the province is stating are in response to the housing crisis and trying to build houses faster, as you know, they have that catchphrase they keep using. So I just wanted to point out that within the Township of Severn, we treat every application the same. So whether you're an independent property owner, a small business owner, a developer, you get in the same queue and we treat your application the same. So you wait the same time periods, you are subject to the same review. There's no special or different treatment if you're building 500 homes or if you're building one home, or if you're building a small business or if you're building 300 homes, everyone gets treated the same. So I just wanted to highlight that to council because there has been some discussion here, and it is the province's intent to speed up this building process, especially for large developments. So I think at a staff level, we just want some direction on if you did want us to change that process to prioritize these large development applications or continue our current process where we treat everyone, you know, individual property owners, small business owners, developers, all in the same queue, all in the same manner. So I know we're looking for a bio break, but if we could just have a little bit of discussion on that so we have clear direction, that would be appreciated.
Councillor Mennings.
Hi, thank you. Through the mayor to Katie, thanks for raising this. And I know I've raised it before at council meetings. I think this deserves an agenda item of its own on a future meeting, not too distant future. And I don't know that you need to have a definitive response. I may be wrong for the purposes of tomorrow's response to the province. But, you know, one of my burning questions, and again, happy to hear back at a future meeting, is that if you do maintain your current internal process and my home build is behind a developer with 300 homes, does that make me, you know, clearly I'm disadvantaged already because now I'm 301 in line. So I do think it warrants its own separate discussion, and I thank you for raising it.
Councillor Brennan.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it is an important point. First of all, large developers have deep pockets and planners and consultants. There is no reason why they should be submitting poor applications. They know darn well what is expected of them in doing a subdivision. They know it very well. They may not like it, but they know it. The minute we prioritize these developers is the day we sell out every other resident in Severn Township. because they're the ones that will need our help. And we will never get to them because we're going to get wonky proposals over and over again with the expectation that they're always in first place and nothing else matters. It would be a disaster to change your current course. Again, if anyone should be submitting good proposals, it's the big guys. And if they don't want to do it right, they should go to the back of the line. That's my view on it. Thanks.
Madam CEO, did you want to weigh in on that?
Thank you. I can't say it better than Councillor Brennan, and I think Councillor Minning's suggestion that we have a separate discussion, because I think this is a bigger discussion. I don't think you're wrong in any way, but the reason that we brought it forward was because all of the new mechanisms favor developers at appeals. So council will have to balance how much you want to spend on appeals to how much you want to service your general ratepayers. But I would love to have a fulsome discussion about this, because pretty much once a week, our larger developer calls me and says, I want to be at the front of the line. You know, we are bringing 1,000 homes or whatever, we're bringing big dollars. And I tell them each and every time, our process is to treat everybody equally. You know, we want to support the residents that are already here. That's great that you're bringing more residents, but our residents that are already here are also important. And they don't appreciate that conversation from me. So some council direction would be welcome for me.
Thank you. So as part of it, Madam CEO, just the statement, like, we're bounded to get back to them in a certain length of time, are we not? Is that, or can we take our time based on, because it's more than just the planning department, it needs to get circulated to all the department heads. And if some of our department heads take longer than what's needed to get back to the planning department, does that not hold it up as well?
Yes, through you, your worship, that's a really good comment, because often when planning department says, you know, your application takes 8 weeks, that doesn't mean it takes the planning department 8 weeks. They could probably do it tomorrow for you, but they're sending all of the things out for peer reviewers. So we have a little bit of control of our internal staff, but you know, they also have busy jobs, but we don't have a lot of control on our consultants. Similarly to the conversation I just relayed to you, the other conversation that I have with the developers all the time is, you need to do better with your peer reviewers. They need to be faster and more responsive to us. And my response to that is always, I agree, but when I call and tell them to be better, what is my for else? There are only a handful of engineering firms. There are only a handful of peer review firms. There are only a handful of environmentalists. They are all busy with this massive growth all over Ontario. And Severn is such a minuscule piece of their business that it is impossible for me to get us to the beginning of the line. And they hate to hear that, but that is 100% true. And if I knew what the for else was, I would implement it, but I don't.
Thank you. So
I'm not sure I answered your question, Mayor Burkett, because I got on my soapbox there of something that bothers me greatly.
You did. If we're going to have some sort of workshop, to Councillor Minning's comments, I think part of it is also the lawyers that are involved, and the site plans that need to be signed. And there's a whole realm of things that need to fall into place before they get approval. So I think we all need to be aware and have that on the table so that we all have a better understanding. It's not just the planning department that people think are holding them up. To your point, the peer reviewers, the engineers, the lawyers, like, there's a whole realm of things that we need to understand that has to take place before they get approval. But anyways, we can discuss that at more lengths later. Councillor Minning.
Sorry, if I may just, you reminded me, your worship, what I was going to say, what I was going to tie it back, though. We always have to tie it back now to the developer appeal friendly climate. So that's the thing. The developers, we only have 120 days once we deem the application complete to make a decision. And in my time here or anywhere, quite frankly, I have never seen that happen, because back to Councillor Brennan's point, they don't do complete submissions that have already addressed all of the standards and all the things that they need to do. So it goes back and forth. But what we're seeing now is, yeah, we don't care if we haven't agreed on the back and forth, and if your peer reviewers aren't done, or if we haven't done a good job in the submission, we're just going to take you to the appeal, because it's all about developers right now. That's the challenge.
So as part of that, when an appeal does happen, Madam CEO, that again takes time away from our planning department trying to complete those applications that are in the queue. So now they have to prepare to fight the appeal. So it just slows things up. But anyways, Councillor Minnings.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting the fact that this needs another discussion. And I fully support the stress that it causes on planning department, but it also causes stress on residents, et cetera. And I think that perhaps the process that we have, there's an opportunity for council to better understand and perhaps help us help ourselves as far as the planning department and resourcing it, so that it's not a one size fit all. Because although I am sympathetic to the volumes, etc., we are just creating a backlog, and it is to Township's advantage to get the development applications put through also. So I'm thinking of options. I'm a consensus person, and perhaps it means that running two streams or something. But if we could prioritize that discussion so that we fully understand how to move everything forward, I think we'll all be in a better place and get more, a lot of benefit from it, even if it. And I think the issue starts with the township, and are you actually resourced properly for it? So thank you for that opportunity coming forward.
Councillor Brennan, who wanted, Deputy Mayor Cox, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I think once again, this needs to be stated that it's going to cost municipalities. All this is coming back to our taxpayers and putting it in the pocket, and those developers are not paying for that. I don't care how much development charges they pay. We now, because of the province, will have to spend more money again to fight or to try to get through things or to hire more staff when we have a splurge on it. And then when there isn't one, then what do we do? But it all comes out of the one taxpayer. So I don't know if we've got that covered in there, Katie and Andrea, but it's going to be this downloading again that's going to cost us and the taxpayers. And I think that for a municipality our size, that is a very important factor. Thanks.
Okay, any further comments? Councillor McIntyre, are you still okay?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm okay. I do agree we need to have a separate and healthy discussion with respect to the order in which we review each and every application. So I look forward to that. So I'm okay otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Mandeville, or fine? Okay, do we have a motion, Madam Clerk, for this first part?
We do. So the motion reads that planning report number P24-016 dated May 9th, 2024, with respect to Bill 185, cutting red tape to build more homes, act be received. And further, that staff be directed to provide comment on to the province on ER posting 0198369 and 0198317 and 0198399. As set out in the analysis section of the planning report, and further that the Council of the Township of Severn concurs and supports the submission from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, on Bill 185.
Just a comment, should we inform the neighboring MPPs of our concern or no?
We can CC them on the correspondence when it goes in.
The only reason I'm asking, if we all remember when the Premier tried to allow 3 severances on pieces of farmland, and there was such a backlog from the MPPs, it didn't go through. And I know in the PPS that Ms. Woodrow is going to speak to, I have questions about it. I see that they're allowing severances, well, not severances, you're allowed to put a couple of accessory buildings on those lands, but he pulled that because of the strength of the MPP. So Yeah,
Yes, well-
if it's okay with council, if we can CC our MPPs for their support.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Manning, second by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? That's
Yes,
carried.
from me.
And just for council's concurrence, we have noted that there will be a future discussion on the process, resourcing prioritization of planning applications. So we've noted that for a future meeting.
Thank you.
So I guess further to council's idea, we're going to take a quick bio break, and during that time, I'll see if I can get the video up and running for Mayor Burkett and Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you.
Okay.
J2, planning report number P24-017, new provincial planning statement, the PPS. Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. So I'm just going to pick up where Katie left off. She outlined a number of changes that are proposed to various pieces of provincial legislation. What's impacting us the most are the proposed changes to the Planning Act. So it's the Planning Act that enables the province to issue plans under that legislation. So more specifically, the growth plan and the provincial policy statement from 2020. So what I'm just going to do is highlight some of the issues that I think, as contained in the report, are of concern to Severn. So the proposed provincial planning statement for 2024 proposes to replace two plans, the provincial policy statement 2020, as well as the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Council may recall we did comment last year around this same time on the first draft in 2023 on the first provincial planning statement, and some concerns that we had are still outstanding and some have been addressed. So the first area I'm going to touch upon are the settlement area boundary expansions and new settlement areas. So the 2023 draft included criteria that should be considered when considering boundary expansions or new settlement areas. The good news is that should has been upgraded to a shall, so shall be considered. The concern that still is outstanding is that the needs test for those expansions and new settlements has been removed. And what the needs test means more specifically is that a municipality would have had to demonstrate it would have run out of land to accommodate growth. So that demonstration no longer has to be demonstrated. Basically, anyone can apply now at any time. In addition, the repeal of the growth plan, with it goes the removal of the intensification and density targets as well. So now, unfortunately, we can't have those density targets in our official plan without being challenged by developers. So we could try to put them in, and they are good planning principles, but they could be challenged as a result. Just moving on to rural lands, limited new lot creation in areas that are not prime agricultural are in keeping with the township's previous comments. And we are also kind of carrying that forward into our new official plan. So if you're not on prime agricultural areas, you can have limited severances. So that would be considered in keeping with the direction the province is going. However, what we did see was the removal of multi-lot subdivisions in rural areas, and that's in keeping with our previous comments. So we're in favor of limited lot creation, however, not subdivisions on rural lands. Just moving on to agriculture. So we've previously heard about the new additional residential units or ARUs on agricultural lands. We do support this as an affordable means for multi-generation housing in the township on single properties. So general support is there for that principle. We just want clarity from the province that those ARUs cannot be further severed from agricultural or prime agricultural areas to fragment the landscape. Council will likely recall the 30-meter setback to water for our shoreline properties. That was, we heard a lot of concern about that from residents. That was in the growth plan. So if the growth plan is to be revoked, that firm 30 meters will also be removed as a requirement. However, the PPS does provide general environmental policies to protect natural heritage features. So what we've done is put the 30 meters in our official plan. However, we've added flexibility that could be reduced with appropriate environmental study. So that's in keeping with the direction the province is going, as well as our new official plan. Where some concern comes in is the next section as well for water and hazard lands. So as we know, watersheds, they cross municipal boundaries. They don't stay within the Township of Severn itself. So we have some concerns because that is a function that the County of Simcoe would assist us with for matters where, natural heritage features, watersheds, that sort of thing, cross municipal boundaries. So, and we also don't have a conservation authority to help us with that. So these are issues that are going to be downloaded to the township to deal with and coordinate. The next area is employment. So where we do have concerns here is the province is proposing to narrow the definition of employment areas such that standalone offices and institutional uses such as hospitals or long-term care facilities are no longer included in that definition. Another concern would be that offices would typically provide a good transition land use between, say, industrial uses and residential uses and act as a buffer. So now if that's no longer included in the definition, land use compatibility could be a concern as a result. And finally, the last section is on housing. Again, this goes back to concerns with our relationship with the County of Simcoe. Although they would continue to be a service manager for housing, that's usually coordinated also through the land use planning process. So there is a concern that there could be a disconnect while the township's trying to plan for affordable housing and targets and implementing that in coordination with the county. If we don't have that planning kind of relationship to kind of act as the bridge, we're concerned in terms of our implementation and our abilities there. So that's just a high level overview of the PPS changes that we're recommending comment on. So open to any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Woodrow. Would you like to start it off, Councillor Brennan?
Thank you. Through the mayor to the director of planning. Yeah, wow. I mean, there's just so much in there. It's rather amazing. So I don't know. It seems to me, from a planning point of view, the loss of intensification targets is a pretty serious loss of a strong planning tool in terms of reducing the amount of other areas like farmland and so forth that reducing infrastructure, construction, all of those things. Like I'm shocked that at this time that the intensification targets are suddenly gone. There's no greenfield density targets either, and again, it makes for inefficient planning around everything from transportation to you name it. So much of this requires inefficient development. The settlement expansion, I think we've spoken to, and we're going to have a lot more private sewer and water services, and I throw the question out to the director of planner. I'm not sure what that really means. I mean, I live on one. I'm not sure how bad or a good a thing that is, but definitely we would have more of it, and of course, the farm thing is just reverses commitment. I mean, they said they weren't going to do it, and now they're doing it. It's the same old stuff over and over again. And I am very much concerned. By the way, the 30-meter setback, professionals consider that the absolute minimum to protect water courses and things. That's the minimum. So, when you do consider going less than that, that's pretty serious stuff. The functionality of the systems becomes quite limited, if not invalid. So I do hope we retain that 30-meter thing and we are tough on exemptions down the road. But I am concerned about the changed definition with regard to wetlands. And it is my understanding from the analysis done by, I believe it was Environmental Defense, that 80% of the wetlands that are now protected are no longer protected. So, talk about going backwards. We're really going backwards. We're going backwards 50 years in planning here or more. And I'm just wondering, what do you see? And this is a question I posed when you asked for questions, is what do you see the impact is, in our in and around our communities of this particular change? Thank you.
Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett, through you to Councillor Brennan. So lots of great points and questions in there. So I'm just going to try to go through your various questions, and please remind me if I miss any. So just with respect to your first or your most recent point about the wetlands, the one thing we were happy to see between the 2023 draft PPS and the current draft, the 2024 PPS, is the removal of the permission for multi-lot development on rural lands, so outside of settlement areas. So the province did claw that back. And so you're not allowed to put a multi-lot subdivision in the middle of rural lands outside of settlement areas any longer. So that is one point they have listened to. I think with respect to your comment about, and it's kind of related, the directing development to settlement areas, right now, we have a difficult time even with the density targets to ensure that those are being met. So we have to meet those density targets municipally wide. So we want to make sure when we do have a development in settlement areas that we actually meet those targets, just to be safe and to have a buffer. So with the removal of those targets that we're already being challenged on, is of grave concern. So developers are going to be looking at alternative ways to develop. The good thing, again, I just really want to reiterate that they did remove that multi-lot development in rural areas that could have impacts on wetlands potentially, and other environmental features has been clawed back. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. The additional residential units on agricultural properties, I think that's instead of being able to have the 3 severances that Mayor Burkett had originally spoken to earlier, I think this is an alternative, and it's more beneficial than severances for a number of reasons. If you add additional residential units to an existing parcel of land, there is criteria. They're to be clustered closely together. They then support multi-generational families and that sort of thing. And they can't be further severed is what our understanding is. We're asking the province to make sure they clarify that. But instead of fragmenting the land with further severances, you can now just further develop on a single parcel and support more affordable housing for families, which we actually heard through our official plan process as well that folks are looking for. So instead of severing 3 properties, you can now actually have 3 residences on one property as long as they're clustered and they meet some other criteria as well. Just remind me, sorry, some of your other points there that you'd like me to address.
Oh, yeah. Do you see any serious implications with regard to the private water and sewer expansion of that throughout the area? Like, I don't know what kind of challenges that really poses. I mean, my system works great. Everything seems happy. As long as somebody doesn't dump toxic material on my property, I'm a happy guy. But what do you see from a planning point of view as challenges related to that?
So I believe through you, Mayor Burkett, to Councillor Brennan, just further to your point there are specific policies that have been added regarding partial services. So what that means is you're partially serviced by a municipality and you partially have a private system of your own. So a prime example is municipal water with a private septic system. Now, we don't have any of those as far as I can recall in the Township of Severn, any recent ones anyways. So the new policies I think you're speaking of with respect to partial services and expanding rural settlement areas are not typically a concern. There's not too many developments in Severn that would request partial services. A lot of the reason being is if a developer proposes partial services, the portion that is under municipal governance, such as water, for example, typically requires the developer to post significant securities, have additional agreements with the township. I believe it's called a memorandum of, or what is it now? An MO. I might have to get the director of finance to help me because he's worked on a couple of them before. But basically, they don't want to post that security and have those agreements with the township. So we don't see a lot of demand for it, and it's only with respect to expanding rural settlement areas. Sorry, Katie, did you want to add something there?
Ms. Mandeville?
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. I was just trying to help the director out with the municipal responsibility agreement term.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We only have 1 or 2 in the township, and they're not, they're not something we see a lot of, but developers tend to either want to develop in a fully serviced settlement area, do individual wells and septics in our rural settlement areas. We don't see a lot of demand or request for those partial services, like basically split, where the developer does half the servicing and the municipal does half the servicing.
So the last part that I was hoping you would answer is, it's my understanding now that if the municipalities or if the regions' planning responsibilities are eliminated or whatever they're doing with them, what about mapping of continuous mapping of wetlands and our natural heritage areas? Where is that at in this new world?
If I may, Mayor Burkett, through you to Councillor Brennan. Certainly right now we rely on the county greenlands mapping, but if the county is no longer to have planning approval authority, that mapping will eventually become outdated, obviously. And so that as far as Ms. Mandeville and I see, we'd have to coordinate mapping with our lower tiers, our directly adjacent lower tiers like Oro Medonte and Ramera. We're going to have to sit down with them and figure out how we do it. We're not sure if the county can still have a consultant role. So if they're not actually making planning decisions or reviewing planning documents, could they still act as a consultant for us to kind of coordinate those projects? That's something we've been wondering, and hopefully will become more clear.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Minnings. You're on mute. There you go.
Nope, I know. I was looking for the button. Thank you. Through the mayor to the director. In number 8 under housing, could you help just expand on what you've written here about the township anticipates complications in the policy to now establish and implement a minimum target for housing that's affordable for low and moderate income households? I'm not aware of your plans to establish a policy, so just if you could speak to that in relation to the response. Thanks.
Absolutely. If I may, Mayor Burkett, through you to Councillor Minnings, and I may ask Katie to help with this one, as she does sit on our committee with the County of Simcoe for affordable housing. But what they're proposing, as I understand it, to do is download to the township more of the targeting and where it's supposed to be in terms of low and medium or moderate incomes. However, the county is still going to be the service manager or the overall provider for housing. So it's that disjoint where now they do most of that work for us. Now we're going to have to split that work. And how are we going to do it efficiently? Because if the service manager at the county level is also helping Innisfil and they're also helping Ramera, how do we make sure they're sensitive to our needs and our specific targets when they have so much to cover? But I might ask Ms. Mandeville if she wants to add anything more as our rep on that current council committee.
Ms. Mandeville.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Burkett. Just following up with what the director said, you know, some of our new councillors especially may not be familiar. There's a council liaison group, a council housing group from the county, and then there's also a municipal employee group. So it's a housing liaison group with all the members from the county that the township is on. So primarily it's been me over the years, but lately some of our planners have been going to the meetings as well. So the way our current situation with the county works is that we are all in it together. So the county is what's called the service manager, which is a defined term, and they provide the affordable or the rent geared to income, all those kind of housing parameters. So that's not set to change. The county would still be our service manager and would still look after those affordable housing. What is set to change is that instead of the county having affordable targets and now this low and moderate income household targets, instead of the county having those targets, we as the Township of Severn would have those targets. So we're just not sure how that works with the county. And I think the director did a good job of speaking to that, that disjointed. We've never been in the housing game here in Severn, although we sit on these committees and we try to encourage people to put in basement apartments where we have services. And we try to encourage these different development forms. We're having some great discussion with a group in Coldwater right now about, potentially some affordable housing. We've really not been in the housing game too much. So we're not sure how we as a township can have these targets, but yet the county would still be the service manager. So how is the county going to allocate resources and the county going to look after that grand scheme umbrella, but then make sure the targets in each individual municipality are met? So it's just kind of obviously a change in process, but also not something we're aware of how we would track or how we would implement that at our own level.
Yeah, so thank you. So supplemental then, I am aware of those committees, although I don't know if minutes are posted. I don't believe they're shared, and I know it's never come to council since I've been on it. So I guess my question is, affordable housing for low to moderate income people. You mentioned basement apartments, but I'm talking about actual standalone homes, townhomes, multi-density homes that are not the $1 million homes that we're seeing that are in development in Severn. So from your role on that committee, that was my question about if we currently don't have low and moderate density housing. And if we do have staff sitting on those committees, what's the difference?
Can I speak to that? Is it all right if I speak to it? So, Councillor Minnings, I sat on the Affordable Housing Committee at the county for 10 years. So what they look for, there are monies that do flow from the federal and the provincial level, but they also look for developers that what they do is they may front them some money. They will build and it's far from low income housing because they subsidize the people that are in there using the different buildings that they build. But it's over a 20-year. When I was there, they had 2,600 homes that they had to, or affordable units that they had to build within a 10-year span, and they did meet their targets, but the definition of affordable is, in my mind, was not affordable because they were expensive to build. But what they did is the projects were subsidized by upper levels of government. The county would collect the rent. Some developers, like, it's very complicated. You can go online and read about them on the Simcoe County website, on our agendas that we have, and it's on there, I think, every quarterly we met. The formula was very complicated because the buildings that the developers built after 20 years, they would own it. And the formula was, I can't explain the formula. It was very complicated the way they came around to it. But we, as far here in Severn, we have nothing because they had to be built on water and sewers. And I think that was the question. We haven't, unless it happens in the village of Coldwater that Katie stated that she may be working with someone, they're not looking at building in the middle of a farm field. It doesn't work. There has to be water and sewers for it to work.
And thank you to the mayor for that. So yeah, and I think that's my point, is that you've been on a committee for 10 years. We've got staff on it. We do have a population that is experiencing growth, and we don't have affordable housing. So I'd love to see it as a priority here in Severn, but I don't know that we've advocated for it. And at the OSUM, the Ontario Small Urban Municipalities Conference last week, there was discussion and presentations from municipalities, our side, that actually initiated those. And it wasn't the developer waiting for the developers to initiate them. So again, I'll bring it forward through our process for a discussion at a future meeting, but I am very interested in low and medium housing coming to our township. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair. It's interesting when you look at the growth plan, it was developed to curb urban sprawl by regulating and controlling growth. And now it seems that I read that the vision statement of this new PPS is more than anything, a prosperous Ontario will see building more homes. So basically it's once again, development is there in order to do it. My one question was the natural heritage system. Do we have a strong natural heritage policies in our official plan? Because I was reading that if you do have that, that can help cover you for the fact that the way it's going to change, that it shouldn't affect us more than if we didn't, through to either, Ms. Woodrow?
Ms. Woodrow?
Thank you, Mayor Burkett, through you to Deputy Mayor Cox. I think that's a really great question in light of our new official plan. I think we've struck a really good balance, and I think this also goes to one of Councillor Brennan's points that I may not have addressed, and I apologize, so hopefully I can do it now. So the growth plan set the firm 30-meter vegetation protection zone from key hydrological features. We heard from a lot of residents that the 30 meters in some cases was not flexible enough to allow for development of their property just due to other topographical constraints such as rock outcrops and that sort of thing. So the balance we feel that we've really struck is we've put the 30 meters from the growth plan that's proposed to be revoked. We've put that in our official plan as a good practice and what we'd like to see, but we've added policies to say where feasible. So the 30 meters could potentially be reduced. We've seen instances where 28 meters may have been supportable through an appropriate environmental impact study, but we still couldn't accept that because of the 30 meters firm in the growth plan. So I think we're pretty happy with where we've kind of come to, good environmental planning principles, however, subject to some flexibility with appropriate justification by professional ecologists and that sort of thing. So we think in our new official plan, we still have strong environmental policies subject to some flexibility, but only where appropriately justified.
So I guess what I'm thinking is in the end, will we have to, this growth plan, natural heritage will be downloaded to us for us to do in the future? Right.
If I may, through you, Mayor Burkett, to Deputy Mayor Cox, absolutely. I think I noted before, we can count on the Greenland system from the county that, our official plan has to conform to the county official plan. We can only count on that Greenland system for so long. It will have to be updated in the future. And if the county is unable to assist with that coordination, depending on whatever direction comes from the province, we're going to have to do that at our own local level and consult with our neighbors to try to make, where these natural heritage systems and features cross municipal boundaries, how are they going to make sense? Do they line up? That sort of thing. We're really hoping that the county will still be able to have, a kind of a consulting lead on those sorts of things, but that's still to come.
Yeah, and further to that, if I may, through to Ms. Woodrow, the county has spoken. I've heard them talk previously when the last downloading came on that process that they would become hopefully consultants for that. The other one about the service managers is that federal money that the province lost due to their not meeting the target is now being given to the service managers. So they'll be handing out the money for housing. Is that right? From what I gathered, heard on the news that will come through the service managers from the feds and it will be given out. So that is money for affordable housing, or is it, if anybody can answer that?
Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. Through you to Deputy Mayor Cox. I'm sorry, I don't have that information right in front of me at this point in time. We could endeavor to get that to you, or I'm not sure if Ms. Mandeville.
No, I can talk about that. It was just that came through at OSAM also that we were losing out on it. But what the federal government did is they said they were going to put it through the service manager. So I'm assuming it's going through the county. And it's good to know that the affordable housing the county will still be involved in it. It's just the different policies that they won't. That was my only question. And once again, I'm going to reiterate, it's costing again that we will now have to to look after once we actually find out all the specifications, which will take a while anyway. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to Andrea. So number 5, the natural heritage. So refresh my memory. So that came, the natural heritage mapping came from the province. Is that correct?
If I may, through you, Mayor Burkett, to Councillor Taylor, yes, that is correct. That is mapping that came from the province.
And that's where some properties zoning got switched, say from, in my case, from rural to greenland. So is that where greenlands came from? And who else has greenlands as far as our neighboring municipalities?
Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett, through you to Councillor Taylor. So the Greenlands designation or concept comes from the county's official plan. So it would apply to all municipalities within the county of Simcoe in the same manner. When the natural heritage mapping was, I guess, released by the province, there were some concerns by the lower tier municipalities and the county of Simcoe with respect to the fact that it didn't quite match up with the county's Greenland designation. So as an interim step, the county and the province agreed that we could use the Greenlands mapping in the county's official plan as the official natural heritage system until the county's official plan could catch up with the provincial natural heritage mapping. But now that that mapping is proposed for revocation, we would just default back to the county's Greenland mapping.
And just as a follow-up, I know that our township was probably hardest hit with the paintbrush with the natural heritage, like 3/4 of the township. So yeah, I'm just seeing if is that, so that's going to stay no matter what then, or what do you see for that?
Ms. Woodrow.
If I may, Mayor Burkett, through you to Councillor Taylor. So at this point in time, if the plan to revoke the natural heritage mapping and the growth plan itself go through by the province, we would default back to the county Greenland system. And then again, next steps with respect to the county and their planning role. We would have to over time update that Greenlands mapping. It's just who's going to do it and how are we going to do it? That's still in question as the county role is in question at this time. But the natural heritage mapping by the province will be revoked with the growth plan itself, should the province go ahead as proposed.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Cox.
Excuse me, further to that, through the chair to Ms. Woodrow. So on that natural heritage, then that should be one of our concerns, is that mapping will now have to be absorbed by the lower municipality and the cost again. Thank you.
Any further comments? So just to that point that Councillor Taylor and Deputy Mayor Cox brought up, so the county are the ones that are doing the Greenland mapping and have done the Greenland mapping. It wasn't us. So if this is taken out of the equation, we'll have to hire outside consultants to do it on, like, we can't do it in-house, can we? Or is that something we'd have to hire out? Another cost that we're going to have to absorb. I don't know if you have an answer for that or not, Ms. Woodrow. I'm sorry to ask you.
Mayor Burkett, no, that's an excellent question. And I think it's an important question. It's something definitely we would use a consultant for. Perhaps you could, if the county's no longer involved, you could partner with some of your lower tier neighbors to use the same consultant and look at natural heritage features that cross municipal boundaries. Again, maybe the north of Simcoe County, that's a bit more green, could be together, versus the south. But ideally, you want to do the whole county at once. So it's a very good point. It's not something we can do in-house. And the role of the county with it being in question as to what they can help us with and what they can't in the future leads to definite concern in that regard, both from good planning as well as financial.
So just further that, the growth plan was enacted back in 2006 by the previous government. And part of that growth plan, the heritage mapping evolved from it. So if we're going to take this all out of the equation, do we actually need a heritage mapping? Do we actually need it? Or how's it going? Like, is there clarity as to what the province is going to put forward regarding the heritage mapping, or is it here to stay?
If I may, Mayor Burkett, in response to your question. So if the province goes ahead and revokes the growth plan and the natural heritage mapping, the provincial planning statement as proposed is trying to pick up basically, natural heritage policies and directives moving forward. They're just perhaps not as prescriptive. So yes, in response to your question, yes, we will have to have natural heritage features mapping in order for us to be in conformity with the new provincial planning statement 2024. I think Ms. Mandeville wanted to add something there.
Ms. Mandeville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to add on to the Director of Planning's comments, thinking about something Councillor Brennan said in the last report, is also not just natural heritage mapping, but that watershed mapping that it's an uncertain future. We've discussed over the years mapping for natural hazards rather than natural heritage. So those would be, flood prone areas, places like that. So all of that responsibility is going to be basically, as the deputy mayor has said many times, downloaded onto us. And I just wanted to point out that it's, there's certainly a lot of costs involved hiring a consultant to do this work. But I think what a lot of people don't think about as well is that staff have to take time to manage that consultant, right? It always sounds like such a great idea. We'll hire a consultant to do this for us. Well, it takes a lot of time and effort to manage a consultant, especially a consultant that's not familiar with the township or not familiar with our process or not familiar with the way we do things. So I just wanted to point that out, that even though, it's going to be money, certainly it's going to be money. It's also a lot of staff time to manage all these processes, even if we hire consultants.
Thank you, Katie. And look at what we're doing today based on what the province is trying to change. As I said before, when I drove by last week, 8 o'clock at night, there's still someone here. So the hours that you've spent to prepare this report is taken away from your normal day's task of dealing with the day-to-day business. Councillor McIntyre. No? Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, through the chair. So through the chair to Andrea and Katie. So are we making comments about this change with the county in our comments to the province? Because I believe that we should be more positive and proactive and say, we need the county. Like, we're not a region. We haven't got anything regionalized. And I think we need to tell them about the different parts that the county does for us. And I know that probably there's other municipalities that are quite happy to say ta-ta to the county planning. But in the end, it'll come back to catch up with us. So I'm just wondering if we should be in different places saying, yes, we need the county to help in planning for this. And yes, we do require, and I understand, even if we said, and if you're not going to leave them the way they are, we would appreciate, or we feel that they could be a good consultant, because as I think it was the CAO said, there's infrastructure, there's roads, there's so much that if you take the county out of it, then if we start putting something on a county road, it becomes our responsibility to figure out what to do, because all they're going to do is say, well, that's our road. We don't have anything to do with planning. So I don't know if you put that in, and I hate to add more to you, but I believe that we still need the county to have some type of planning help for us and for all of Simcoe County, so we grow in an organized fashion.
Who would like to answer that? Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett, through you to Deputy Mayor Cox. I think throughout both reports, there's hints of that in various themes, but if it's the directive of council, we could put an overarching kind of comment that kind of ties it all together, further to your point.
If it's okay with council, I think I agree with that. I believe we have to, if nothing else, if we say it and something falls back, we can say, well, we said this. This is, we should at least put it on paper to say what do we agree and don't agree with. Thank you.
Just to comment on that, and I agree with the deputy mayor. We look at over the years, yes, we do pay the county money, but what they provide for us when we reach out for help, it doesn't cost us anything extra. They have engineers that are there, and I know that we've used them in the past free of charge. It is free, but it isn't free because we don't get an added bill for it. And there are so many things that the county helps us with because they are our partners. Like, yes, they're an upper tier municipality or an upper tier level of government, but anytime you reach out to them, and both the deputy mayor and myself sit on county council, they're more than helpful to provide that lending hand whenever we ask. So I think it needs to be stressed, without the county there to help with planning issues that we have, like, we'd be lost without them. It's going to cost the taxpayer huge amounts of money without their help. Just a comment. Any further Ms. Woodrow?
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. Just in response to your question, I think it will be important, just further to the discussion here, that the province defines what it means for an upper tier municipality without planning responsibilities, such as that proposed for the county, what that means for the county of Simcoe specifically, like what they can and cannot, be authorized to help us with. So I think adding a comment in that regard, requesting clarification with what exactly that means for the county of Simcoe. I mean, it may not mean that for Peel or Halton or whomever, but for us specifically, we're quite unique and we still require that assistance. So we can certainly add something to that, to the comments with that directive from council.
Any further comments? Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a general question out for everyone. Does anybody else feel like I do that they're going to eliminate the county and our relationship and go to a regional government here? I'm just getting an idea that we're going to be grouped into a region that won't have the benefits that we've enjoyed all these number of years with the two-tiered system with the county. Am I the only one getting the idea that eventually, if we stay with this existing government in the future, that we're going to be regional at the end of it all?
Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, sorry. I think that the planning is the one part right now, but unless the province has someone in mind to look after community and social services, health, paramedics, housing, that the county does all those things, and the roads and the engineering. Right now, they're coming at us about the planning part. They already did come out, sort of say to us a few years ago, about becoming regionalized, and that's when they pulled the Peel, Mississauga, and then they backtracked on that one. So the county sort of is in a limbo right now. They're not really sure what the province wants to do with them. We did ask for a facilitator, but I don't even know if that's even around anymore. But I believe that the planning part of it is the first part, but they will have to have someone, be it regional or county, to provide all those other services that the upper tier municipality provides for the 16 municipalities.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments?
Just supplementary to that. I'm just having this wave of thoughts that we're going to end up. I know they're breaking up the region of Peel because Mississauga is moving on, but I think they've had a change of heart on that, and they can't get out of it now. But I think that because of the 16 municipalities we have in the county of Simcoe, that I think that the people down on Queen's Park would have a better feeling if they could regionalize everything. And as the deputy mayor said, select someone to handle this and someone to handle that. There's overlapping stuff that they're trying to eliminate, I think, by doing this with the plannings, maybe perhaps the beginning of it, and then they'll go fire, and then they'll go on and on with all the. So I just wanted to make a comment that my feeling is that they're going to block us into a regional area, and then we'll become somewhat less needed than we are at the moment. Thanks.
Madam CEO.
I was just going to say, I wouldn't make a guess at what the province plans because they change every day, but what they're doing in planning is downloading, not uploading. So they look like they're going to the closer to the people level of government rather than the upper tier. So I see it going the other way, Councillor McIntyre, but I don't have a crystal ball, so who knows?
Any further comments? So I just want to make one, I'm not sure why I know why the province is giving so much authority to the developers, but do they not realize that Queen Park, that most of the municipalities in the county of Simcoe are are surrounded by farmland. Like the only places you can expand is if you take farmland, and by the looks of what this bill's going to do, a developer is able to expand a settlement area onto a piece of farmland. So should we comment that like the rules that may apply for the city of Toronto don't apply in rural Ontario? Yeah, we're two different entities. Like rural Ontario is different and works differently than the city of Toronto, but I'm not sure if that's a fair comment, because I'm reading, like, I struggle with the fact that a developer can now, if they have justification to expand the settlement area, all they need to do is apply, and what they're going to take is farmland. That's what they're going to take, whether you're in West Shore or you're in Coldwater. All that surrounds those settlement areas is farmland. I don't know if you have an answer, if that's a fair comment, Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you for your comments, Mayor Burkett. I know that in the draft PPS 2024, there is criteria that has to be met before you can expand a settlement area. One of them being you can't expand into prime agricultural areas. But to your point, what if all of the areas around our settlement areas are prime?
They are.
So then what do we do? We're in a very unique situation here in Severn. So of the prime, what is less prime? So
and I understand that, but I'm just curious, do the staff down in Toronto, do they understand that? They obviously must see what surrounds each settlement area. Do they understand that it's basically prime farmland, like Ms. Mandeville?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add on to that. I don't know about members of council who've been on for a long time, but I'm having so many flashbacks of the natural heritage policies when the growth plan came in, and us having a very similar conversation on, the difference between the geography and the landscape and the makeup of Severn Township versus that of, somewhere in York Region or Peel. And I think that was one of the advantages of the growth plan, is that it treated different areas in the province differently. And I think as much as we had growing pains, so to speak, with that document, I think it is an important part, an important point to make to the province, is that perhaps there needs to be different rules for different municipalities. They have done that a little bit with this list of 29 large and fast growing municipalities, or whatever they call it. They have to have density targets, they have to do increased reporting, all of that kind of thing. But I don't know that getting away from a separate planning document for larger municipalities or more southern municipalities is the way to go. And I think that's a fair point, is that, not all municipalities in Ontario are the same. And comments we'd previously made, previous councils have made here, is the ability for us in Severn, or us at the county level, to make policies that work for our municipality. So I think that's still a fair point we could put forward. Some of the wording in this new PPS and through Bill 185 is that you can't be more restrictive, or you can't add increased caveats beyond what the province is proposing. And I don't think that that's an approach anyone at this table wants to see. I think we want to be able to say what's best for our municipality, how we want our municipality to grow, and how we want to protect the environment in our municipality. So perhaps that's a caveat we could add, is that we would like to see the ability for Severn, and with the County of Simcoe's help, to decide where we grow and how we accommodate that growth, still keeping in mind that we do need to meet some growth targets. So perhaps that's something we could try to incorporate into these comments, is more of a Severn approach.
Thank you very much. Well said. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Yeah, and on that note, the way that they're allowing us to sprawl and spread from an automobile suburban to more complete communities is something else we need to look at, because the developers are all putting subdivisions where everybody has to drive everywhere, and we're trying to promote climate change, or walking and healthiness and all those complete community things. And they don't understand that when we put in a subdivision, let's say West Shore or even Coldwater, in a farm field, that those people now all drive everywhere. So the sprawl is happening, and we need to educate people, but we also need the province, as the mayor said, to understand the difference between the rural area and the urban areas.
Councillor Jansen, did you want to comment? Did you have anything? Okay, so just one thing. I just wanted some clarity on what's written in the report, or what Bill 185 states about the employment lands. they can be removed from the, like, lands can be removed from the employment area. Like, and I'm looking at the one that we have in Coldwater. Is that something this new 185 will entertain, so they can take those employment, and we're lacking employment lands. We don't have enough. So how do we, like, is that something that may happen, or are they allowed to happen as a developer in Coldwater? And I think you know which property I'm talking about, Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Mayor Burkett. In response to your question, certainly landowners can make application for employment land conversions to other uses. However, the draft PPS 2024 still lists several criteria that must be considered. And one of those is that municipality already has sufficient employment lands on the books. So in our particular case, as identified through the county MCR, we are currently in an employment land deficit. So that criteria is difficult to meet.
Thank you.
Because of our situation.
Thank you. Okay, any further comments? Okay, well, I just want to thank you, Andrea and Katie, for all your hard work. Well done. Taken away from your everyday tasks, as I've said many, many times. Yeah, let's see what happens. Do we have a motion, Madam Clerk?
We do, and we've added a little bit to ensure that the comments provided by council are reflected in the submission. So it just says that planning report number P24-017 dated May 9th, 2024, with respect to the proposed provincial planning statement PPS 2024 be received. And further, that staff provide comment on ERO 0198462 as set out in the analysis section of the planning report, with additional comments based on the direction of council.
Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. No new business. General bylaws, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Motion reads that bylaws number 2024-30 to 2024-31 inclusive being are hereby read a first, second, third time and finally passed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, second by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? That is carried. Any announcements? Announcements. We now go into closed session. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Motion reads that committee resolve in a closed session that this meeting is hereby now closed to the public pursuant to the Municipal Act, SO 2001, Chapter 25, Section 2392, for the purpose of considering personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, in litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That's carried.
Okay, give me 1 moment. 8:58 a.m. and that the meeting is hereby now reopened to the public.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Jansen, second by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? That's carried. Confirmation bylaw, Madam Clerk. Or do we have a motion? Do we have a motion regarding the in-camera?
No, they were just informational.
Okay, confirmation bylaw.
So motion reads that bylaw number 2024-32 be and is hereby read a first, second, third time and finally passed.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, second by Councillor Jansen. All in favor? That is carried. Did you want to say something before we adjourn, Madam CEO? Okay.
Just saying goodbye.
Goodbye.
Motion to adjourn is that this meeting is hereby and adjourned at 11:59 a.m.
Mover and a seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Cox, second by Councillor Minnings. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. That was a very informative meeting. A lot of work put into it by everyone, and yeah, see what happens.
A lot of work by the staff. Thank you.
Yes,
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank
Yes,
you.
fine.
Have a good day.
Have a
Bye.
good day, everyone. Bye-bye.